Yeah, good point. What do you think?
I think we could go ahead.
Great. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you so much for joining us. Welcome. Thank you for joining our second open forum that's been organized jointly by the Association of Academic Museums and Galleries and the New England Museum Association, AAMG and NEMA. I'm Juliette Bianco, the Anne and Ben Cohn Memorial Endowed Director of the Weatherspoon Art Museum at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. And right now, I'm still the Northeastern Regional Representative on the board of the AAMG. I'm delighted to be joined today by my colleagues and New England Regional State Representatives as well. Thank you all for being here. I wanted to let you know that today's forum is being recorded. If you're a member of both AAMG and NEMA, thank you so much. If your museum is a member of just one, please consider researching and recommending that your organization also join the other. Both AAMG and NEMA are committed to serving and connecting museum professionals, and together we can strengthen our museums and be catalysts for education, community, and social change. The first forum that this group jointly hosted focused on the mission of academic museums during COVID-19. And we closed that session with a poll asking everyone to help us choose which topic you were all interested in discussing next. So today's topic, I can verify, was selected through a democratic process. In today's open forum, we'll share and explore our new and revised exhibition and programming practices as the pandemic continues. We'll explore the extent to which our museums have chosen to pivot to online exhibitions and programs, and to identify the risks and benefits. And we're hoping you have really rich conversations around all of these topics. What have you learned about your institution that might impact your approach to exhibitions, programs, funding, fundraising, and how you work in the future? And how can academic museums innovate around these challenges? What can we learn from the current moment to promote greater and more equitable museum access, participation, and collaboration for the future? I'm very pleased to introduce our two facilitators for today, Carrie Weber, the Frank and Clara Meditz Executive Director at Fairfield University Art Museum, Fairfield University, and she is the Connecticut State Representative on the AAMG board, and Deborah Diston, Director at the Mechanich Art Gallery, Southern New Hampshire University, and the PAG Coordinator for College and University Museums at NEMA. Carrie and Debbie, thank you so much for hosting our conversation today, and we look forward to it. We have 147 people on the call right now. We're so glad you're here.
Glad to be here.
Great. Thanks so much, Juliette. I think what we're going to do, I know what we're going to do, is do what we did last time. We're going to put out a few ground rules, but the way this is going to work, if you weren't part of the last forum, is we're going to move everyone into breakout rooms so that we can have real impersonal conversations. It's hard with a group of this size to do something with everyone, but what we'd love to ask is that you keep track of what breakout room number you are in, and choose someone who can just jot some notes about the highlights of your conversation. And then we'll do that for about a half an hour. And then we'll all come back together and report out so we can share with the larger group kind of the high points of your individual conversations. And everyone can get a sense of what was discussed. But this is for you all. So while we say we're going to talk about programming, if there's a burning issue that you want to get feedback from your peers, please, don't be shy. So introduce yourselves and just let the conversation go where it goes. But Debbie has a couple people asked questions in advance, and we thought some of those might be good guiding topics for your conversations. Debbie?
Yeah. Okay. So just as a reminder, the context of our conversations is about are dealing with our exhibition and programming in a virtual format. So many of you have been doing this in a variety of ways. So this is a great opportunity for people to share what they have done and what they've learned. So I'm going to read a few questions that were posed to us at the beginning as examples of what you might want to ask one another and to get feedback on what you're dealing with. The first question is, our annual student exhibition, Gallery Installed, always includes the work of cinema video students who sometimes use copyrighted music in their works. I have been asked to include their work in our virtual exhibition this spring, but I'm concerned about the legality of posting these videos on the college's website. I would be most grateful to learn what others, I'd be most grateful to learn how others have handled this situation. That's the first question. The next question, so far, what was the most technically complex public program that you've pulled off using Zoom? What made the program technically complex and what made it a success? Similarly, what was the most socially complex public program that you've pulled off using Zoom? Next question. How are you handling working with live presenters who have less skill access equipment? Please tell us what preparations or back-end support has paid off in your live online programming initiatives and serves the goals of providing equitable museum access. Last question. Very interested in what type of documentation other galleries are using to borrow works for virtual exhibits. We've gone to a modified permission to use form versus a loan agreement, but it was one we created on our own. Advice, suggestion, thoughts. So based on two of those questions that were presented, they addressed some legal issues, and we discussed before this webinar started, we are not in a position to provide any legal advice. I believe that nobody that is part of this is in a position to provide that. So our recommendation is if you're dealing with legal concerns, you need to refer to your own contracts and procurement office in your university or college, or refer to your legal department. And with that, those are the only questions that were presented to us before the webinar. We're going to break out and have you all have an opportunity to have your own conversations addressing the questions similar to these, or whatever else you come up with. Okay, so are we ready?
See you back here in a half an hour.
Yeah, you've got a half an hour, right? And you'll get a prompt to return to the main room. Okay, so give us a few minutes and our technical support will divide us into groups.
And just so everybody knows, to be clear, a half an hour from now will be 4:10.
Great.
Jen, you doing okay?
I can't find Carrie. Ah, got her. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Join.
John, were you assigned to a breakout room?
I don't know. I just
Okay.
clicked. It said go somewhere, and I clicked. I switched from a iPad to a desktop, and so I
Okay.
was. But I don't
Okay.
know where I'm here. I'm here in virtual space, wherever
I
wherever
think you
that
can
is.
stay in the main room here with Carrie's group.
Fine, I'll stay anywhere. It's all just Hollywood Squares anyway. So
It is, yes.
And the same, Lisa, are you new? Did you just come into the meeting?
Yes, but I've been in, let me see.
She was in our breakout room.
Oh, okay, I just let somebody else in. So
Okay.
if the number gets too high, just let me know.
No, this looks great. So for those of you who weren't in the breakout room with us before we came back here, and if you don't know, we are being recorded. So and I've been assigned the note taker for our breakout session. So and I'd love for everyone to introduce themselves. Everyone saw who I am, so would just love to know who else is here. Michelle.
Hi, I'm Michelle Carella Fillmore. I work at Cal Poly Pomona. I run the University Art Galleries, the Kellogg University Art Gallery and the Huntley Art Gallery. 4,000 square foot space for the Kellogg, 1,000 square foot space for the Huntley. I also manage the collections for the university. I'm a staff of one, and I have student employees part-time who work with me to help. And I don't know if that's enough or.
That's perfect. John.
Hi, I'm the director of the Jordan Schnitzer Museum of Art at the University of Oregon. And my predecessor, Jill Hartz, hosted an AAMG conference here a few years ago. So some of you may have seen the museum. I've been here a little more than a year, coming from University of California, Santa Cruz, where I was the director of an Arts and Sciences Institute there, and then Skidmore College, the Tang Museum, Tang Teaching Museum, which is very active in academic museums on the East Coast. So glad to be here.
Great to have you. Lisa?
Hi, I'm Lisa Ortega. I'm the museum educator at the Museum of History, Anthropology, and Art at the University of Puerto Rico's main campus in San Juan. Glad to be here.
Great. Stacy?
Hello, I'm Stacy Brennan. I'm the curator of education for the Lehigh University Art Galleries. Our former director, Ricardo Vieira, was really involved with AAMG, and our current director, William Crow, is now too. And I've been here for a little over a year, but it's where I started my career because I'm a Lehigh alum. So I studied in the galleries many years ago, and now I'm leading our programming. So it's nice to come full circle and to be here today. Thanks.
That's great. That's funny because our curator of education and academic engagement is a Fairfield alum. So she did the same thing, coming full
That's
circle
awesome.
back to her alma mater. Sadler?
Hey there, I'm Sadler Taylor. I'm the curator of folk life and fieldwork at the McKissick Museum at the University of South Carolina in Columbia. So glad to be here.
Great, thanks. Leah?
Hey, sorry, I was helping other people at work.
We'd just love for you to introduce yourself, tell us where you are, what you do. Okay. Lana? Okay. I guess we'll just go forward with our cheery group here. So I don't know what's on everyone's minds in terms of programming. If anyone has a burning question they want to throw out, we could do that. Otherwise, I think it might be interesting just to kind of jumping off of those prompts, kind of what, I guess I'm curious to know the magnitude of your virtual programming, like how much you're doing and what you're using for virtual exhibitions, what you have found most successful, and if you've used multiple things, and what are you most proud of? How about that? Okay, since I just came up with the questions.
I'll start.
Oh, great, good.
So when all this started, some of the things that, I thought of first were kind of, I think, pretty logical. It was to make sure that our online presence was good, was heightened, and our social media. We had 2 exhibitions that we had to close without being able to dismantle them. So in some ways, what I did was to help promote those exhibitions. And what we're doing social media wise is doing highlights of the show, like still showing pieces from the show, but just sporadically throughout the months, we've been highlighting the different artists and their work, like on a weekly, semi-weekly basis. In addition to that, we've been also just along with it in parallel doing the social media highlights of the same thing. So it's a little bit repetitive. We're just hitting the different platforms that way. So online presence, building up our website, doing these highlights with e-blasting to our mailing list as well as social media. One thing I was able to do was go on campus before they shut us out completely from being able to go to the campus, because right now we can't go at all. But luckily I was able to get in at one point, and I videotaped both shows pretty extensively, so that, and did it from the point of view of a viewer coming in and seeing the show. So we were able to create video tours, and we're working on that right now. We've been finishing up editing that, and we're just going to go ahead and do a promotion of that. So there's just another platform of being able to see what's there. The other thing we've been working on is virtual exhibitions, which has been quite the challenge. It's a major learning curve. I'm dealing with architecture students and graphic design students. Luckily, I have them, and a lot of them are pretty savvy with dealing with gaming and things like that. We are a polytechnic. We just happen to be having, have the students with skills, but they've been learning because weren't doing this at all before. So learning how to use Rhino and Unreal Engine in combination to create these animated experiences that interactive experience, not animated, that people can walk through, has been really a challenge, but exciting at the same time. The biggest problem with that has been trying to reproduce 3-dimensional objects, because it doesn't work well in this environment yet. The software isn't up to standard. I think it's something we certainly realize needs to improve. 2-dimensional isn't a problem. Video work isn't a problem. But 3-dimensional reproduction, if you don't have 3D scans or 360-degree photos, imaging of your objects, it's near impossible to really capture those correctly. So virtual exhibitions, video tours, online presence, social media. And then I have to say the last thing major that we've done, and has been pretty exciting, has been back in April, a bunch of the directors in the entire CSU system, I can't say entire because some of them we have not been able to reach. We've tried. We created a consortium of the Cal State University's galleries and museums, and we have put together a 6-part speaker series. We've pooled all our monies together. And if we didn't have money, our resources together. Some are more technologically able to do certain things. We've got basically a series of virtual Zoom talks with important artists that are being done every month in each semester. So September, October, November, we have one coming up next week, February, March, April, and we've joined together. We've kind of like created subcommittees within the CSU. So I worked with Cal Poly Pomona, worked with Cal State Northridge, and CSU Long Beach to organize a show where we had Beatrice Cortez. The other focus was socially engaged artists, especially with the advent of what was going on in the summer, and the death of George Floyd kind of prompted us all to rethink who we want, what type of voices we want to hear. So we chose to focus on artists of color, artists that were doing socially engaged work. So we had Beatrice Cortez in conversation with Erin Cristovalli, who's one of the curators at the UCLA Hammer Museum. And so they had a conversation. The artist presented her work, and there was a conversation exchanged between the curator and the artist. And we're doing similar things. We had Post Commodity in October. We're having Forensic Architecture, a collaborative group from London next week. And then we have 3 additional speakers planned for the spring. So that's been something major that we've done. It's really exciting, and we've had our challenges with it, but it's been a work in progress, learning, and we're improving each event as we go.
Yeah, thank you. I had actually heard about the speaker series.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, well, I'm part of another consortium, the American Jesuit Colleges and Universities. So there's about 26 museums in that consortium. And we were looking at your collaboration as a model and trying to figure out if there was something we could do, but we haven't come up with with what that is yet. Lisa, do you want to go next?
I have a question for Michelle, actually.
Okay,
great.
I'm curious about what equipment did you use to film the exhibitions?
Oh, because it was just me at the time and I was doing this quick and dirty, I used my iPhone.
Fantastic.
And it was
those are great.
It was really all I had at the moment. I had no way to work with somebody else, with a camera operator or lighting person. I just went through kind of guerrilla style, filmed it all. And to be honest with you, what's nice about that, it's a vertical, I guess I could have turned it horizontal. Mm-hmm. I went vertical. And my staff later said, why didn't you go horizontal? It would have been better. And I said, I wasn't even thinking at the time. I was just rushing. And what the nice thing about the vertical is that as you approach each artwork, the other space in the view of the viewer can be used for the caption.
Okay. And that was my next question. Who is doing the editing? I'm sorry.
My students. Luckily, they're savvy, and preview, After Effects, just whatever software they had available.
Okay.
Those are I asked them, I said, well, what's the best way to move forward? And one of them said, well, I have this program. I'm like, okay, you're the one doing it. And they were,
great.
How we've been moving forward as a team.
Students are really helpful.
They've been great. Resilient.
Yeah.
Anything, and I keep telling them, you're learning resilience and adaptation. And if you can do both of those things, you're going to be successful in life, in your career. Just do it. You know what I mean? Find ways, be resourceful.
Yes. I was curious because we are a big collection with very few staff. We're 6 people now. During the pandemic, one person quit to go to another museum.
Oh.
So now I'm doing my job plus design work, because I happen to have an MFA and I know a few design apps and whatnot. But I'm doing social media posts. I'm doing designs for social media, and plus trying to come up with content for social media. And it's overwhelming because at home I don't have the equipment that I have at my job, at my office. So I feel that it's being asked too much of of one person to do all these things, and I have 3 children at home that are, going to school online. So at least I made an arrangement with human resources that I can't be expected to do everything perfect and comply with deadlines. So with my supervisor and everyone, I've been able to manage that plus the program that I'm about to say. Before the pandemic, we were doing a program for older adults, 55 and up. We said 55 and better. And it was going great. And just 2 lessons short, two sessions short of finishing, we were closed down. So the grantor, which was Aroha Philanthropies, they're based in Minneapolis, they said, try to do something with your participants so they don't feel isolated as well, especially if it was going on so well. So we have a contract, personal contract that knew how to flip it over into virtual in no time. Again, thanks to these helpers, that they're not full employees of the museum. I was able to go back to them and provide them with 2 sessions that were virtual, but the 2 sessions became first tutorials on how to use their own phone or their iPads or tablets or desktops or laptops. And that was a lot of time and effort, but it worked out very well because we were able to reach out to them. This is people that were from the community around campus, outside campus, but they were also retired employees, or they were people who only wished that they attended university, and just to participate in this program was so important to them because it was at the university. So at many levels, this was a program that we couldn't just let it go like that. And we were able to bring it back, and we were able also to offer September and October sessions of online art lessons, like drawing. And it went well also, again, with the difficulties. And since our power grid here is not good, even before the Hurricane Maria, we've had a lot of interruptions with the internet connections, but still we have developed so much patience with technology. It's really good. And that's where we are.
That's great. That's great. John, do you want to go next?
That's a good question.
You're muted.
Well, I'm in a situation where we actually have a lot more staff resources, but we still manage to be, have too much work and be behind on stuff. So if there's any consolation there, the more you have, the more you try to do. We have a lot of online programming that's expanded dramatically since March 14 when we closed. We did reopen again on October 3rd, but very limited visitation and very few academic visits because most of the classes are online. I'm in the chat. I am posting a link now to remote teaching resources, which is a page on our website that lists a whole slew of different things that we're doing. We're doing minute exhibits, which are 1-minute walkthroughs of shows. We're doing longer walkthroughs with curators periodically. We've done some digital exhibits for a show that we couldn't hang in the galleries because we were closed, and experimented with a kind of a vertical scroll software program. I'll post a link to that. We have another kind of slideshow program that, oops, I actually posted that last one, not to everybody. Let me do that again. We have what we're trying to do is we're trying to experiment with a lot of different things in this period. We've been doing programs, education programs. We have a whole slew of things called Art Heals. Like we have a program called Madres Club for Latina mothers in the area. And we have programs that we do with University Hospital in Portland, OHSU, where we work with doctors and patients, and almost in a therapeutic art therapy kind of way. And we were doing those online. And the interesting thing is, like, the Madres Club used to get about 15 women coming to the museum. And recently, the last one we did last week, we had 60, and they were from all over the state. And so we've sort of, we're realizing that by doing some of these things, and same thing with the doctors and patients, that we're actually able to reach a lot more people than we were able to reach when we were just in person. So we're thinking a lot about that. Well, what does that mean? Should we push more on that? We are developing new virtual tours using the Matterport system and software, and it's a camera you can get that we had grant funding for from Art Bridges Foundation, and it allows you to sort of walk through the galleries. You put this camera that makes a swiveling image, a 360-degree photograph, and it does a really good job. And we ended up, after testing a whole bunch of different ones, we sprung for the expensive one because we had grant funding, which is about $3,000. And we haven't posted that yet publicly because we're trying to figure out how much information to add to it. Because we have, PDF study guides, and we have videos sometimes of curators talking and a lot of other stuff, and trying to figure out how much we want to sort of clutter up the gallery view. But we're going to start using that this Saturday in the afternoon, West Coast time, 2 p.m. Our Asian art curator, Anne-Rose Kitagawa, is going to be doing, and chief curator is going to be doing a walkthrough with the Matterport of the Chinese collection gallery, together with one of the scholars of the Chinese studies, Ina Asim is her name. And they'll be doing that together, a conversation sort of in the gallery, only it'll be virtual, moving around. And I'm actually gonna be driving. I'll be, so that they can just walk and talk. Or actually, no, that's for a different Matterport tour. This one, Anne Rose will drive, and Ina, Professor Asim, will talk. And so it'll be a chance to try to replicate that experience of walking around the gallery, only virtually, and doing a sort of big screen share for it. So that's been an experiment. And we're doing artist talks online, and we've done a membership party online, and they're all done live in Zoom. And so we're just trying to throw as many balls in the air as we can. We've also started making our catalogs available for free downloads with PDFs. We're not making any money on them anyway, so we figure, why don't we let people read them? And we're posting those for past shows, and we're trying to figure out paper versus digital PDFs for fall magazine. And our audiences or members and others are saying, we love pieces of paper now because everything else is on the computer, and we're sick of the computer. So please keep sending us the paper. We don't want to have to, don't have to worry about the computer any more than I have to. So we're gonna keep producing paper, even though I sometimes feel like we're just killing trees. So yeah. Anyway, I encourage you to look at those links. I think what we're trying to try different stuff to learn, because we think it's going to go on for a long time, and we're trying to learn things we can use even after whatever the next normal happens. It still works for our academic mission, and we have had a lot of academic use from faculty. I'm doing architecture crits on museum architecture with MArch students and seniors, and other curators are doing stuff, and so we're trying to really encourage faculty to use this as much as they possibly can.
I'll just do a pitch for Art Bridges. We were able to get a Matterport camera through a grant from Art Bridges as well, and we just published our first tour. If anyone wants to look on,
can you post a link to that?
Art Museum. Yes, I can. But I encourage you all, if you've not worked with Art Bridges, it was just a lovely experience. If you borrow a work of art from them, they not only pay all the expenses relating to that, you have the opportunity to apply for up to $10,000 in programming related funds. Stacy, do you want to go?
Sure. So at Lehigh University Art Galleries, we were lucky enough to launch a new website last spring before the world shut down. And we were in the process of digitizing our collection. So we have 17,000 works of art in our collection. We have about 2,300 up right now on our site, which I can share. But we've been capitalizing on that as much as possible through partnerships with faculty across campus, encouraging students to research our works of art, and then publishing some of their research in form of videos or writing on our website and through social media channels. We have been doing a lot of virtual programming. Our current exhibition is called Doing Democracy, which will says enough in itself. It's the exploration of the democracy in the United States. And so it's been a really great opportunity to collaborate and partner with community organizations to offer virtual programs and conversations. So we've been doing a lot with that, a lot of student videos, utilizing social media as much as possible. And then we have a number of classes through our museum studies program where students are leading lunchtime conversations around works of art from our collection. And we've had a good response from that, where we can live stream them and then record them as well. So in addition to that, school partnerships, a lot happening at once. For a small staff, we're really working hard to make sure that everything we do can be translated into a digital world. And so we are exploring virtual exhibitions. And for the meantime, we've been doing like curators tours and short clips as well that some of you have talked about. And I'll post a link to our website here and can share some of those as well.
Thank you. Sadler?
Yeah, I think we've got about a minute left, right? But we've been adjusting to some of the same things that everybody else has. Back in the spring, we had a large quilt exhibit up that was it was in its second iteration, and it was going to start a third iteration in April. And so that exhibit, fortunately, transitioned real well to an online version because they're essentially 2D objects. So the photography wasn't that hard to make that transition. But, we had our curator of exhibits who taught himself WordPress so he could get that exhibition online. And our director was doing on-site quilt documentation days where folks can bring their quilts in and basically get them documented. And we transitioned to doing those quilt documentation days on Facebook Live. So that provided some interesting challenges. How do you go from doing something that is very much interactive on site to doing it online? So we continued those through the spring, and we're going to continue them through this fall. So we've just been dealing with a lot of the same challenges, scrambling to learn some new technology and kind of divvy it up amongst the staff, and how that happens with some success and some sharp learning curves. But like John said, we hope to continue a lot of this programming, once we go back to whatever the new normal might be one day. We've found a lot of value in the work that we've done. And I think one of the challenges is trying to truly get a good feel for how many people you're engaging via this type of online work and the quality of that engagement. So that's some of the qualitative things we're trying to really get a good feel for how that can be measured.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Sadler, but I just wanted to let everybody know I've invited everybody to come back into the main room.
Great. Well, I'm sorry to those of you in my group that didn't get a chance to speak. But we're going to have another one of these because there's never enough time to talk about everything that needs to be talked about. I don't know how to tell when everyone is back with us, but
It looks like we're at 88 people.
well, I see Debbie now, so I think we've got everyone back. And I think we will, our group definitely didn't have enough time to even get to everyone. We had all had so much to say. I hope you all had fruitful conversations. And we would love to hear what some of the high points that got touched on in your groups. So if we can go around, hopefully you remember what room you were in and someone was taking notes. So, and we have such a short amount of time. If your group doesn't speak up, we'll just keep going because, yeah. So I hope there was a breakout group, room 1. Do we have someone from, yay, Cassie?
Yeah, so we lost someone about 15 minutes in who had to go pick up her kids, but we had a great discussion that mostly focused on programming, but with a little bit of online exhibit at the end of it. But we basically discussed the shipment of responsibilities and how and who was covering these online programming. Was it coming in-house, or were we reaching out to other university departments for help? And we found mostly it's been museum staff that have shifted their focus and their time. There's a considerable amount of time from my group, or they indicated, that was put into programming. We also talked about how we felt that the stakes were much higher. The pressure was higher for online programming and exhibits versus sort of an in-person event, just because there is that disconnect there with the actual monitor and the computer. We talked about sort of what was most successful. Programming took the lead over exhibits, and then always social media is very popular. And we talked a little bit about in-person events, but then with the online exhibits, we talked about how not just to launch an online exhibit, but how are we going to do the rest of the components that come with it, the reception and the artist talk, and how does that look all virtual? So all around great discussion.
Great. Breakout room 2. Do we have anyone to speak up?
Well, I'll speak up, even though we all said we'll just chat. Good job too, mixing up the breakout rooms, because we were all from different corners of the country, and that's very cool. That in itself is very cool. We just talked about the difficulty of getting our work out there when the doors are closed. A couple of the groups have been loading images onto Flickr and outside, outside entities because of the difficulty of creating something completely new at this time, when it, as a small museum, your resources are so limited. One thing that came up, which I think we all wrote notes about, was adjusting your loan agreements to include use of video, which hasn't been listed on a lot of people's loan agreements. So we all have that on our checkbox. So it was great to share. We talked about the benefits of the increased access to the country and the world with the resources that we're creating. So that also puts a lot more pressure on quality. We were talking about that too. And a big one, and it came up, it looked like in the chat right before we all broke out too, was we're really concerned about adequate assessments of our programming and how to really get people to respond. But none of us had a great plan in place for that yet, but that's things that we're all working on. So
great.
I don't know if anybody else from group 2 wants to add anything. But
Thank you. Group 3.
I took notes on group 3. And we started out by discussing if we had virtual exhibitions, and everyone had some kind of virtual exhibitions, and several of us have them on different platforms. And so we discussed found out that people have them on their museum website. Some have started them on Squarespace and Google sites like that, in addition to Google Arts and Culture Stories. And then several of us have also newly done 3D scans, primarily hosted through Matterport, but there are some other options as well for that kind of immersive viewing of galleries. And at the Davis and some other places, there were already some virtual exhibitions, including at Tulane, that were linked to in-gallery exhibitions, in addition to virtual exhibitions that were independent. But most of us have introduced new virtual exhibitions that are not necessarily tied to in-gallery experiences under COVID, although not everyone. And we also discussed assessment of visitors, how many people are coming and how they're engaging. And I think that's something that is challenging most of us, and figuring out what people are looking for out of these. I think for university museums, when they are tied into the curriculum, that offers opportunities to for kind of structured engagement and like bringing people in. We then turn to programming and what kinds of programming people are doing. Several of us have, of course, continued doing various kinds of class visits, both asynchronous and synchronous through videos, but then also live Zooming. And what else for programming? Artist talks, quite a few of us have done artist talks, both pre-recorded and live. Several of us are polishing our live Zoom to then post on YouTube later. And we had a really interesting suggestion for Netflix parties and museum events.
Thank you. Group 4, 5, 4.
Yeah, I was in group 4.
Perfect.
We spoke a lot about, it seemed like a lot of us were doing presentations online, like what would have been lectures, doing them through Zoom webinars, and that type of thing. And so, you know, we talked about that, and also the challenge of trying to engage students who are really tired of looking at screens. And in some cases, the participation has not been what we had hoped. So that was one of the things we talked about. There were some members of our group who were doing like programming, you know, more educational programming, filming classes, that type of thing. Most of our institutions are open, and we discussed a little bit about the audience, you know, the amount of audience coming in. And although it's not what it used to be, we were pleasantly surprised that people are coming in, and we have classes coming in, and community members coming in. And at the end, we did talk a little bit about, I asked a question about, you know, polling if you're doing webinars, and I'd be interested in hearing about that, because that's something that we'd like to add to our Zoom webinars, which we've just begun doing. So.
Great, thank you. Group 5.
I guess I took notes for group 5, but essentially we had all more or less were fluent and familiar with Zoom, and had talked about how we had integrated our programming in through Zoom. But our conversation was really about the mechanics around virtual exhibitions, because we had came at it from 3 different points of view. Some galleries that had sort of fixed installed exhibitions already used Matterport and a 3D camera and put that out. And we created ours in SketchUp, and then created a kind of filmic experience around that. And then and others used Kunstmatrix, which is also really flexible and easy one, like Art Steps, where you can import art into them. And then we basically did curation over Zoom, and we did our and all of our you know, meetings and all of our, you know, receptions and things over Zoom, which worked out pretty well, I think. And what came out of it, I think, was a really robust conversation around how this had enabled and really extended the reach of the galleries, especially for national, international audiences, where students have the chance to see, their families from other places remotely, to participate both in these openings and also in the artwork itself. And then there was a mix of who was open and who wasn't. And I think for example, the university in Michigan, the Marshall Fredericks, they were open. And so they were able to do both in-person and virtual exhibition experiences. And we at Stanford, we were completely locked down. And so we had to rely entirely on the remote experiences and what that is missing and what that enables. And you cannot replace the physical experience in a space with art, but you can extend it and you can amplify it with the virtual. And that's sort of where we ended up. And I'll let us go at that point.
Thank you. So group 6.
Yes, hello everyone. My group primarily focused on, I'd say, the silver linings, or really thinking about what are the opportunities of this moment and our remote environment. When we were speaking about exhibitions, we primarily focused on zooming in on 1 or 2 objects, on using high resolution images to really look at the small scale rather than focusing on largesse and many objects. So thinking about how the screen allows for greater focus on perhaps an in-depth view with 1 or 2 objects. We spoke a lot about some very creative programs, virtual auctions, and also Halloween parties where all the different breakout rooms afforded such things as a movie viewing or a tarot card reading, and empowering students who are involved in these programs to also really think of themselves as developing digital programs experience and adding something to their CV at this moment, because maybe a student really has a lot of expertise in whether it is in digital technology or maybe editing. And we also spoke a lot about equity and thinking about how to leverage partnerships. So reaching out to affinity groups, reaching out to community groups, and really saying, please join this program. Please know that you will be welcome to ask questions and get involved in the conversations. We spoke about taking advantage of this moment to partner with different researchers and offering a program that maybe has a bit of data gathering involved. And so one example is Being Present with Art, which integrates mindfulness-based stress reduction meditation with art museum pedagogy. It's a program and also a research study that is paired with a psychology professor who is measuring for belonging and measuring for the impact of art and meditation on stress reduction. So across digital exhibitions, student-run programs, inviting multiple voices, and also diversifying community partners.
Thank you. Group 7.
I can take a crack at it. We talked a lot about some of the same digital strategies that other people have mentioned, not just for exhibitions, but for programs, for streaming, for publications. Those included YouTube, Kunstmatrix, Behance, Adobe Spark, Juicebox. Some of these I had heard of, some of these were brand new to me. And I'm very grateful for this talk among so many peers to get some of these out there and hear more about them. It seemed like for the most part we were having fairly good experiences with combinations of these platforms. And I think one of the really interesting questions that we started getting into at the end was how much can we learn about these? What kind of information can we collect about them? And what is the long-term use and strategy with these kinds of things, particularly if, unfortunately, economic positions continue to deteriorate and we are in a position of lower budgets going forward? Can we really think now about how to make these tools really long-lived digital assets and not just, trying to post something that is going to get a lot of hits, in the short term. So, we talked about what are the long-term things that we need to plan for, digital asset building, increasing collaborations with faculty and students, which has been an important part of a lot of people's interactions online and in the virtual sphere. And also what to do with our spaces when we're not in them. What do we do with fallow galleries? How are we caring for those spaces? What could we be doing to use them with whatever minimal resources that we do have? Not answers to all these questions, but those were some of the discussions at any rate.
Thank you. It's a tragedy, but I think, like, I just saw group 18. We're on group 7. We have to stop because it's 4:30 almost. And I would love to hear from every group. So this is sad, but I'm glad we had such a great turnout, and I hope that you all had really great conversations in your groups. And
Terry, this might be a good segue to announce the NEMA conference. Excuse me,
yes.
The NEMA conference, which is from November 16th to the 20th. And we will be hosting a PAG, a professional affinity group for academic museums and galleries, for more of this type of conversation. And I'm sure there's many other topics that would be of interest to all of you if you can participate in any or all of those days of the conference. We will also be hosting another one of these after the holidays. So we're going to let everybody get through Thanksgiving, whatever we can construct of Thanksgiving and the other holidays at the end of the year. I think we'll all need to say, thank you, 2021, you're finally here in January.